Hello and welcome to Adepicos Online. This is the first module, Purpose, of the overall journey of learning how to lead. And in this module, we're going to be looking at step 1, taking responsibility. So why does responsibility matter for a leader? The very simple answer is that there's no sense of responsibility, then the leader has nothing to achieve. If you think about it, people who are responsible are people who have objectives and goals that they want to make happen. They're going out there to achieve the things that they feel responsible for. If you're leading your team and you feel responsible for your team, you want to make sure that your team succeeds. And that's why responsibility is so important, because the person who doesn't feel any sense of responsibility has nothing to do. Now that might seem great because you've got an empty to-do list, but it also means that you're not going to go out there and you're not going to achieve great things and you're not going to be able to realize your potential. That's why responsibility matters for leaders, because it's the basic platform for action and for going out there and building a better world. So we can understand this in a very simple example. Imagine two different captains. One is a very responsible captain of a football team, and the other is an irresponsible captain of a football team. The responsible captain of the football team is making sure that their players are well looked after, that they're turning up for training, that they're playing well in their games, that the team has the right strategy in place, has the right nutrition in place, so on and so forth. The irresponsible captain is not interested. They have very little to do because they're not interested in the overall success of the team, because they're not responsible for the overall success of the team, at least in their mind. And we can see that over time, the responsible team leader, the responsible captain, is going to drive their team to greater success, whereas the team with the irresponsible captain is going to suffer and struggle, and any success it might have will typically be as a result of luck rather than foresight and planning. And this is why we see the quote from Michael Corder is so important, because he says that in the final analysis, the one quality that all successful people have is the ability to take on responsibility. What's he saying here? He's saying that all successful people in the end are people who stood up and took responsibility. They took responsibility for leading their own lives and for building the success of the teams and the organizations that they're a part of. But on the other hand, perhaps you're thinking, well, that's great, but I'm not a leader yet. I don't have that title. I don't have that role. I can't take responsibility. And that's just rubbish. This is where the second quote comes in. We need to understand that leadership is not something that's granted to us. It's something that we must create for ourselves. We choose to step up and take responsibility. Your title doesn't make you a leader. It's the way that you behave. And leaders behave at a fundamental level as people who step up and take responsibility for the things that they care about. So don't wait for people to give you permission. Go out there and fight for the things that you believe are important and stand up for the things that you believe matter. And this is where we see that the third quote from my personal hero, Alexander the Great, is so powerful. He says, nothing is impossible for those who will try. But out of that, the most important thing is the will to try in the first place. To be someone who goes out there and tries to fight the good fight, who goes out there to try and achieve great things. And that comes from your sense of responsibility. It doesn't happen because you're feeling a bit bored and can't be bothered to do anything, but why not, you'll give it a shot. It comes from a determination and a sense of responsibility to go out there and achieve great things. So that's a bit about responsibility, and now we're going to focus in on the specifics of what is it actually really about. And responsibility can be understood as a conscious commitment between you and the thing that you care about to build a better future for the thing that you care about. And the leader is making sure that their team or their organization will have a better future. They are working to make sure that their team succeeds in whatever goals it sets itself. And by doing that, by making that promise, you are accountable for that team's success. If you promise that your team is going to go out there and deliver a 20% sales improvement, then you need to make sure that your team delivers that. Now that's what makes you accountable to the performance. Now a lot of people think that accountability is a burden. It's not a good thing to have. But that again is the completely wrong attitude for leadership. You should see it as a privilege, because yes, responsibility requires accountability, but it also comes with great power. You now have the ability to influence people to go out there and work with you and achieve your goals. As we drill deeper into the psychology of responsibility, we hit on this idea of control. And there's a very fundamental principle to control and the way you perceive control in your life. On the one hand, there's the internal locus of control. People who have this believe that they're in charge of their lives, they are the masters of their fate, and that they make the decisions that drive their life forward. On the other hand, there's the external locus of control. People who have a high external locus of control believe that they're not in charge of their lives. They think that the world is the master of them, and that no matter what they do, it doesn't matter because they're not in charge of their lives. Now, an effective leader needs to have an internal locus of control. They need to believe that they can go out there and shape the world and build that better world with their determination and skill. How do you create that internal locus of control? It's created through granting yourself the sense of responsibility. By saying, I'm responsible for my life, I'm responsible for my team, you empower yourself to go out there and make a difference. And we can see this because one of the key signs of a depressed person is that they have an external locus of control. They're characterized by apathy and helplessness and don't feel that there's anything they can do in their lives. So an effective leader needs to have a high internal locus of control. But you can get a bit too carried away with your internal locus of control. People who get too carried away end up being neurotic, hysterical, and obsessive in their desire to protect and exert control over everything in their lives. So a healthy leader finds a right balance between having a high internal locus of control, but accepting that they're not responsible for everything and that they can't control everything. So let's summarize what we've been saying here. It's very simple. If you want to turn up to play a game of basketball, then you need to take responsibility to turn up and play. Now you're probably sitting there saying, yes, of course, that is incredibly obvious. But let's apply the same for leadership. If you want to be a leader, then you need to step up and say, I want to be a leader. Let's go make it happen. You can't wait for people to tell you how to do it or when to do it or give you permission to do it. It lies within you to step up and say, my time is now. I want to take responsibility for the things I care about. Looking at the bigger perspective, responsibility is crucial to effective teams and organizations. The primary reason for this is that because it enables people to connect together under a common platform of responsibility. People have a common sense of responsibility, come together to achieve that common goal. In turn, that common set platform of responsibility grants an identity. It enables people to define who they are and empowers them to act. Let's understand this through the example of the football team. Imagine that you want to go out there and you want to win the World Cup. So, the common platform of responsibility is that we want to win the World Cup, and the like-minded people come together to achieve that. In turn, because we are the people who want to win the World Cup, we are that team, that actually defines our identity. We are that team that wants to go out there and succeed. And because we have that, we go out and we work hard to do the things that we need to do to win the World Cup. Now, all of these threes are intimately connected, but we can see that if you don't have that common sense of responsibility, you're not going to be able to go out there and achieve your goals. So how do you do it? What does a leader need to do? It's three very simple steps. Step 1, articulate what is important. Very simply, this means tell everyone what you think you're responsible for and what you believe is important. By doing that, you create a social bond of accountability. If you tell people we're going to go win the World Cup, then they're going to hold you accountable to that. And then the third step is the most important of all. You have to walk the talk. Responsibility is not something that should be talked about. It's something that should be demonstrated in your behaviors. And that's something that we're going to look at in the next example. So let's look at 2 examples of responsible behavior. On the left, we have BP, or British Petroleum. A few years ago, their Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, creating a catastrophic environmental disaster and an oil slick so large that it was visible from space. On the other hand, we have Johnson & Johnson, a family healthcare product company, where in 1982, one of their leading painkillers was contaminated with deadly cyanide. What had happened is that someone was buying the medicine and taking out the healthy tablets and putting in deadly cyanide capsules that would mean that anyone who took those capsules would die within a few minutes. So, how did these 2 companies decide to react to these unexpected crises? Johnson & Johnson chose to remove immediately all products across the United States. Even though there are only cases in the Chicago area, they withdrew all 31 million packages across the country at a cost of over $100 million. On the other hand, BP denied all responsibility for what happened on the oil rig, and they claimed that it was the fault of their contractors and the people who were running the oil rig rather than their own. What were the consequences of their actions? Well, Johnson & Johnson had a good look at their packaging and created the most safe and secure packaging at the time. In fact, when you use medicine today and you pop the pills out of the aluminium foil, that was their pioneering effort, because that was the way that they found that people could prove that the medicine hadn't been tampered with, because it would be clear if someone had opened the aluminium and replaced it with a deadly product. On the other hand, BP faced incredible problems. They've been landed with over $42.2 billion of fines. Not only that, they've been prevented from bidding on future oil contracts in the United States to launch new oil fields. The result of this catastrophic failure is that the entire company has to restructure and rethink its global strategy in response to this one disaster. They've had to sell over $38 billion of assets around the world, including pulling themselves out of key contracts that they'd spent years trying to create in Russia. The overall result was that their behavior was a key factor in creating these fines. The US government and multiple different state authorities found that the unwillingness of BP to work to create a successful partnership and build a better solution for the oil disaster was one of the major reasons why they were treated so harshly. On the other hand, Johnson & Johnson were able to successfully relaunch their product in the United States. So what is the overall idea here? It's not that one company is bad and one company is good. It's that you will choose how to face great disasters. And that I strongly recommend that by stepping up and taking responsibility, you will actually empower yourself to have much more successful results. And that takes us to some practical advice on responsibility. It's about consciously committing yourself to something better. You and your team all need to be crystal clear about what it is that you're committing yourself to improve. With that comes accountability. You need to understand that you are responsible for your team and you are accountable for its results, but also your team is accountable as a whole. And you need to work to make that clear with them and the people around you. And then finally, understand that leadership is not perfection. You need to be a responsible leader, not a perfect leader. Responsibility means acting with authenticity and integrity, not trying to be a superhuman. So in summary, what can we say about responsibility? It is the essence of leadership. If there's one thing that leaders do, it's taking responsibility. And they walk the talk. They demonstrate their responsibility through the way that they behave. Finally, a key point is to work with the willing. Not everyone is going to agree with you on how you need to take responsibility and what you need to do as a leader. So find those people who are like-minded and build that common platform of responsibility to go out there and achieve the success that you dream of.